Fridays Live with Jessie. My lovely Find My Past friends and family, please let me know that you are here and you are watching in the comments. If you don't know, we always like to do a bit of a weather report, so please let me know what the weather's like where you are. I am currently in Newcastle. I am back home at the time being. And it's been a really lovely sunny day, but it was proper windy this morning. We're talking like 60-mile-an-hour winds. It was all a little bit mental. So, side note, if you hear a dog barking in the background, kicking off because someone dared walk past the window, that's my dog. Apologies. Unfortunately, I cannot make him shut up when he wants to bark. But he's gonna be good, and he's gonna be quiet. He knows I'm on Fridays Live today. I made sure to tell him. So let's have a little gander. We've got the lovely and wonderful Rose in the comments today. Rose has never been in the comments when I've been doing a live, so this is a real treat for me today. I'm feeling very honoured. And we've got Gina, evening. We've got a breezy Edinburgh. Yes, I feel like those were the same winds. We were getting them. I'm glad it's not just me. We've got Andrew here, 12 degrees Celsius. Spring is really on the way. You know what? I walked past a little patch of grass earlier and there were daffodils. Daffodils in mid-February. Wild, absolutely wild. Lovely though, absolutely beautiful. We've got Anya here. 80-mile-per-hour winds. Yeah, it's okay. Everyone, it's not just Newcastle. Everyone's getting this. Jessie's okay. Jesse's final Fridays Live. Yeah, that was a little bit ominous. I did put that in the Facebook description. It was a little bit ominous, wasn't it? Yes, I am leaving Find My Past. I know, shame me all you want. You can throw your virtual tomatoes at me if you want, but I am leaving Find My Past. So this is my last scheduled live with Find My Past, and probably the last time I will do a live with you guys. If you don't know me, I realize I should probably introduce myself in case you don't know me. My name is Jessie. I work in the social brand and marketing team at Find My Past. So I work very closely with Ellie, and I work very closely with Niall as well. Working on blog content and email content and all of these kinds of fun things, but not for long. My last day is the 8th of March. And obviously, as you know, there are multiple Fridays Live hosts, so this will be my last live with you guys. Why? I'm running a jewelry business, and I'm going to go and run it full time. And it's going to be scary. But it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to do both as much as I would love to. So that's how that's going to go. I'm going to have a quick gander in these comments and make sure I've not missed anything. And then we're just going to kick right off, aren't we? We're just going to kick right off. Gentle breezes, 13 degrees C. We'll be very sad seeing you go. Well, I'll still be around for drinks when I can be. And that's really the important part of any good job, isn't it, at the end of the day? Quickly, before I jump into the new records of the week, start getting your answers in for question of the week. Have you come across any love stories, romances, or even illicit affairs in your research? Now, this one was a little bit risque of me, but it was Valentine's Day this week, and frankly, I love love. I love love. I love people in love. I love reading about people in love. I just think it's so beautiful, incredibly human, and it just makes me happy. So I want to hear about the love stories, the romances, the affairs, the divorces, all of that juicy stuff from your research. That's what I want to hear about. And that's how we're going to honor Valentine's Day this week. So start getting your answers in for that. And we will move on to that in a little bit. But first of all, it's probably time for the new records. And you know what? It's an excellent week. I'm really glad that this is my Fridays Live because it's a really, really good week for records. So super happy about that one. To kick us off, we've got the civil service, commission appointments, promotions, and transfers between 1871 and 1942. So when I say there's nearly a million new records, there's nearly a million in this collection alone. There are 872,439 records in this collection, and they span 71 years before and just into World War II. Now, interestingly, these records just we're not sure why they stopped being published. in 1942. If it was because of the war, you'd assume that they would stop being published in 1939. But no, they just one day stopped in 1942, and we don't really know why that is. But they were originally published in the London Gazette. There is a source link in the transcript. So what we've done is we've transcribed and obviously publicized the data as an index. But if you go on the transcript, there is a source link that will take you to the London Gazette site, and you will be able to view the page for free. But there isn't necessarily much on the page that you won't find in the transcript. You'll find things like a full name, an age, an occupation location, a date of commission, and any additional notes about the individual. Excuse me. So these records will come after either the appointment, the promotion, or the transfer. And what's fun about that is that there'll be certain people in the start of this collection that you'll be able to track their careers throughout the civil service. You'll be able to track them from the day they were appointed to the day they were transferred to a different service or promoted to another rank, which is really fun. We love that. I love that. Anyway, not all of these records will have all this information. A lot of these records don't have an age, and a lot of them don't have a location. So unfortunately, you can't search by location because not all the records have it, but you can search by full name and by date of commission. It includes temporary workers as well as full-time workers, which is fab. It also includes women. Woo! We love record sets that recognize the contributions of women in history. But unfortunately, the women in this collection were all unmarried. Now, that's not unfortunate in and of itself. What's unfortunate is that they could not continue working with the civil service when they got married. So all of these women were unmarried, and if at some point down the line they found someone to marry and ended up getting married, they could not continue their role within the civil service. Now, this did change in 1946, but obviously this collection only runs until 1942. So if you are looking for women within this collection, you'll be looking for their maiden names, their unmarried names, not their married names. And that's important if you're, researching. It covers the whole of the UK, including Ireland before the fight for independence. There were loads of Irish records in this collection, which is really, really great because we all know, say it with me, Irish genealogy is notoriously difficult. Yeah, Irish genealogy is notoriously difficult. So this is really great to see. But there were also loads of records from what we would kind of call what is now, I guess, Northern Ireland. So like Belfast sort of area and that sort of thing. The biggest subsection? I'm going to stick with it. The biggest subsect of these records are for the Postal Service. So just under 500,000 of them are for the Postal Service. This can include everything from clerks to typographists. I'm not gonna venture out into that one again. But also, you'll find really large portions of records for the Admiralty and for the Prison Service as well. So if you have ancestors in the civil service, or if you think you might, or even if you just want to browse, it's a really nice directory to go through, and has some really great information in there. Now, I have a friend, also called Jess, a lovely woman, and she has a really strong family history in the civil service. She herself has just started working in prison services. Sometimes she tells me about her job and it sounds really serious, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I write emails. Isn't this great? But she has like a really serious, like grown-up job in the civil service to do with the prison. And her parents both worked in the civil service and their parents worked in the civil service. So we got this collection through and I was like, let me find your family. So we did end up finding Charles Joseph Mercer. Now, a lot of Jess's family are Irish. And this has made them very difficult for me to trace when I've tried in the past, because family history is something that and history generally is something that she's really interested in. But we did find Charles Joseph Mercer in 1930 working for the post office. And I just wanted to show off that we found him, to be honest. I was really excited, and so was Jess, and it was really great to find. We also found him in the 1901-1911 Irish censuses as well. So yeah, that was a really nice find. That was literally, there was no other point to this slide other than I found a friend's ancestor, but I thought that was good enough to put in there. And we also have Evelyn Adelaide Sharp. Now, this was someone Charlotte found in this collection. Shout out to Charlotte. And she became the first Parliament secretary that was a woman. She became the first woman Parliament secretary. And she was also a very strong campaigner for equal pay between women and men. Now, as we all know, this is a debate that goes on even to this day between women and men and the gender pay gap. So kudos to Evelyn Adeline Sharp for kicking off the conversation and for getting that conversation going. Again, unfortunately, she could not marry while she was in this position, or she would lose her position. But Macmillan later called her the most able woman that he had ever met, which, I mean, in this day and age sounds a bit patronizing, but I'm sure in the 1930s that was a really big compliment. And in 1966, she became a baroness. Now she's kind of considered a pioneer of women's work and equal rights. So another really great record in this collection. I love this collection. Just go and rifle through it. It's great. Next up, we have Second World War civilian casualties in Britain, 1940 to 1945. Now, if you excuse me for a second, I'm just going to take a breath because I always forget to breathe when I'm doing these lives, and then I wonder why it feels like I've run a marathon at the end of them. Everyone take a breath with me. Oh, that was lovely. That felt really great. No, we should do that more often. So the Second World War civilian casualties, there are about 65,000 records or just under. These come from multiple different sources. So the biggest source that they've come from is kind of the tireless efforts of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, but they also come from different genealogical books, burial records, newspaper records, military records. So it really is an amalgamation of different information. And what's great about these records is that they contain a lot of information that other standalone sources wouldn't. So, for example, it contains data for about 4,000 armed forces workers or servicemen who were killed on the home front rather than overseas. So it's not solely civilians. And really interestingly, about 1 in 6 people in this collection, so about 1 in 6 records, about 1 in 6 people died after the event, so after the injury. So when we talk about civilian casualties, we're not talking about things like kind of secondhand, I guess, war deaths, so things like illness or poverty or things like that. We're talking about things like mines, we're talking things like aircraft shells, we're talking things like V1s and V2s, which were both types of missiles. So active enemy action, essentially, rather than kind of secondhand causes. And about 1 in 6 people in this collection died after their injury. So either days, weeks, months, or even in a couple of cases, years after the event. So years after they were injured, they passed away. Now, a normal kind of honor roll or death record wouldn't necessarily give you that information. It wouldn't let you know that, you know, this person died a year after the injury that caused their death. But because of the way that we've collected the information for this collection, you can see, if you look at the transcript that I've put on this slide, we've got the event date here and we've got the death date here. So there may be in some of these records a different event date to the death date, and we've managed to bring that together into one record. So there's a lot more detail here and a lot more that you'll be able to kind of glean about your ancestors', you know, military experience and potential death in the military than you would be able to from a standard burial or death record. And again, simultaneously, kind of along the same lines, these records will also include women's maiden names and former married names. So the actual honour roll from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission doesn't include them. But again, because this has been drawn from so many sources and because we've been able to kind of check our information and amalgamate information in this way, we've been able to include women's maiden names and former married names, which is going to be really useful for people that are researching ancestors in this collection. So that's another really fab detailed collection this week. I love writing about these kinds of collections because there's always so much to say about them, you know what I mean? And the B&A. So, as you may well know, over the past 10 months, we have digitized 13,620,331 newspaper pages, which is so many newspaper pages in the space of 10 months, not even a full year. But this week, listen, our newspaper scanners, they were like, guys, we need a break. And we were like, cool, man, you take a week off. You've been working very hard. It's probably about time you had some holiday. So Consequently, we've given our newspaper scanners a little bit of TLC this week, and there are no new newspaper pages or newspaper titles. But, and don't tell anyone I told you this, Rose is going to kill me. If you go to the British Newspaper Archive, if you're desperate, if you're like, you can't wait until next week for new newspaper pages, which completely understandable, and you go to the B&A website, not the Find My Past website, the British Newspaper Archive website, there will be a section that will say last added. I believe it's called last added, and I'm sure Rose could get me a link here. And things have started to filter on the website at the back end of this week. Now, these won't go live on Find My Past until next week. So this is only really going to be relevant if you have a B&A subscription or if you want a B&A subscription for whatever reason. But you can go, if you are feeling impatient, if you can't wait until next Friday, then you can go to the B&A and you can start to see what's filtering through. But on Find My Past, there has been no new updates to the newspaper archive this week because everyone needs a break, including our newspaper scanners. So that's everything that's new this week. Why doesn't it fit? You know what? My slides never look the way that they do when I make them, when I upload them. They never do the same thing. Anyway, question of the week, as I've already said, have you come across any love stories, romances, or even illicit affairs in your research? So I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, I love it when I can do this right. And I'm going to go back and read all of your lovely comments. Breathe, Jessie, every time. Snowdrops by the thousand. Yes, there are so many snowdrops as well. Honestly, you know when you come out of winter and you see like daffodils and snowdrops and you're like, there's hope. There's hope for me. There is. I can sense the warmth and the life coming back into my soul. That's what snowdrops are. Where are we? Yeah, your Pickles, your dog is barking at every person who dares walk past your house. Yeah, I know that feeling very well. How dare they walk past our house? I feel like I've gone too far up. So next time that Ellie is doing her live, Victoria, you need to say this to her, and I can come back as like a history expert. Even just calling myself a history expert makes me laugh. Compared to the people in this company, my knowledge is like here, and everyone else in this company is like here. You know what I mean? But that is something I would love to do. Absolutely love to do. I can't even lie. So let's have a gander. Andrew says, not found much new, but confirmed that the love interest of Mums and Iris was already married. They eventually wed when he was 82. Again, those last days of life, absolutely. Live life, you know what they say, live life to the fullest, 100%. Always a little bit of historical drama. I can't lie, I love a bit of historical gossip. I mean, I love a bit of drama anyway. I live for the drama, but historical drama, it just hits different. It really does. Well, I'm glad that they found a happy ending. That makes me really happy. Who else have we got? Ooh, we've got Kim, the close friend of William Sancroft and his Arthur Bonus in the late 1630s to 1641. The letters they exchanged were heartbreakingly lovely. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have had this as my question because you guys are going to be hitting me with all the emotional love stuff and I'm going to cry. That is so sweet. That is so lovely. I love it. I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit later about Oscar Wilde, but a lot of his relationships that he had, the properly meaningful relationships, have been documented in letters and have been published and released since. And I think it's really beautiful that we kind of get to witness that. I do kind of simultaneously think, would Oscar have wanted this out to the masses? Probably not, But by that same stretch, it's really lovely that we can kind of have that insight into their relationships through something as personal and intimate as a letter, you know what I mean? We've got Karen, who says, found today from newspapers. Love them newspapers. Distant cousin married an Indian prince. Have another cousin who was convicted of bigamy twice. Historical drama. What did I say? Imagine marrying an Indian prince. I would be Princess Jessie, which frankly I think works. I think your distant cousin, yeah, fair enough, man. They did well. And tell me which newspaper you found that in as well. We'd always love to see it, but feel free to send a link. Feel free to send a link to the article because I love stuff like that. Absolutely. Oh, we've got Liam. Hi, Liam. Late joining today on purpose to miss Jessie's announcement, of course, too emotional. It's okay, Liam. You can cry behind your screen. No one will know. I'll know. I'll feel it in my soul, but no one else will know. It'll be our secret. We've got Ellen. My grandparents, a widow and widower, met when walking their respective daughters to school. I love that. When they decided to get married, they literally ran away and got married in Michigan. Took me forever to find their marriage record. Oh, wow, amazing. That's proper eloping. I've always loved the idea of eloping. You know what I mean? Like, there's just something so romantic about the idea of like, running away, sod it all. We're going to go and get married somewhere completely different to where all of you are, and it's just going to be us. I love that idea. I think that's so sweet. And met when walking their daughters to school as well. The whole thing is just so wholesome is the word I was trying to speak there. Let's have a gander. The father of my 3 times grandfather married the mother of my 3 times grandmother. Sounds straightforward, but the parents were both widowed by their partners. That feels like one of those little family history synchronicities, you know what I mean? When you find things and how like things have like weirdly aligned along the timeline of your heritage, and you're like, oh my God, that's so weird. It's so weird that happened, but I love those. I feel like when I hear about these kind of things, I'm like, the universe is looking out for us. Now, you can call me a hippie all you want for thinking that the universe is looking out for us, but I think it probably is. Oh, no, hang on. This is like a tangent from question of the week, but Karen found her great uncle in the civil service records. Amazing. Worked for HMRC and later the Air Ministry in 1938. He worked there during World War II. Amazing. I'm going to count you as the first person who's found someone in those records, even though you probably won't, but I'm going to count you as number 1. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Karen. I love that. We've got Janet. My grandparents were unofficially engaged before World War I broke out. He asked her to wait for her. Grandfather was taken prisoner of war October 1914, repatriated January 1919, sent her a postcard when he was about to embark from Southampton, telling her how much he loved her. It was a rather tatty plain postcard, which I still have. I feel like my heart is like gonna break, but in the best way. That is such a beautiful story, and still having the postcard as well. That honestly, absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning. Sometimes, like obviously, I mean, we're all aware, I'm sure, of like kind of a lot of the sadness of the world wars, and a lot of families who lost husbands and fathers and that kind of thing. So that it warms the cockles of my heart. It really, really does. And treasure that postcard. I would absolutely kill for something like that. You know what I mean? Something so incredibly historical. And so much love went into writing it as well. And is that not just the best thing? Question of the week. This was such a bad idea, but this is my question of the week. I'm actually going to get emotional. One of my great uncles was out in France during World War II, another war one, oh no, and fell in love with a local lass out there. When he went back to the village when the war was over, he couldn't find her, which was a shame, a lost love. Oh my gosh. Oh wow. I mean, I don't even know quite what to say to that. The one that got away, literally, but I mean, through no circumstances of their own. Absolutely not. I bet you that local lass thought of him for the rest of her life. I bet you she did, 100%. Through Find My Past, a shout out, I was able to discover that my paternal grandparents, who I never really knew as I was only a toddler when Nanny died and Granddad died long before I was born, were married on Valentine's Day. Lovely. You know, everyone thinks Valentine's Day is like too cliche to do anything on Valentine's Day, but I absolutely love it. I think it's the perfect excuse to like proclaim your feelings loudly, go out on dates, get married on Valentine's Day. You know what I mean? Absolutely love it. Oh, a very, very long time ago, I worked as a civil servant in the prison service. Did you? Dare I ask how that was? How was it? maybe in 100 years' time, there'll be people doing this live and they'll be like, I found my ancestor, Linda Robertson. Who knows? We've got Anya here. Yes. My 3 times great-grandparents never married. And my parents never married either. Lots of people down my family line never married. They were boarding in a house and living as husband and wife until 1871 using a surname. They had 1 son, my 2 times great-grandfather, and the following year even, but she sadly died of TB before they ever married. Oh no. My 3 times great-grandfather married soon after, and on his marriage certificate it was him noted as a widower. My 3 times great seem to have been together for a few years and moved from Herefordshire to 2 different places in Glamorgan in Wales. Oh wow. See, this is the thing when it comes to marriage, isn't it? Because like the idea of legally recognizing something when someone, for example, dies, or when it comes to housing and all this kind of thing, is really important in the eyes of the law, but it's not necessary at the end of the day. It's, as you say, they were living together as husband and wife. They were devoting themselves to each other every single day, no matter what the document said. And that to me is more meaningful than anything else, I guess. An ancestor who remarried his first wife 49 years after they first married at the same registry office as the first time. 1901, divorced 1908, remarried new spouses, both widowed, and then remarried again in 1950. Now, I love that. I love that it's come back around full circle. That feels like fate, you know? It feels like they had to go through life and find each other again, you know, come back to each other after they'd grown and they'd developed as people and love each other in the way that they needed to be loved. Oh, no, I love it. I absolutely love it. But have we got any more? Liam's talking about how he went to the post office. Thank you for sharing, Liam. We've got... Ooh, casualties in the UK. I'll have to check out the victims of a V1 attack on the factory where my late mother worked, 1944. She wasn't hurt, just deafened for a while due to the blast. Yes, let us know what you find, absolutely. And let us know if you find anything there. 100%. It's a really sobering collection, as obviously a lot of war collections are, but it has a lot of really, really great detail to it as well for, you know, kind of fleshing out and understanding military experience or the war experience for a lot of people and civilians. So please, yes, let us know. I thought my house was going to take off. So did I, Anya. Question of the week. We've got another one from Rita. I had a great uncle who had a woman living with him for many years who was listed as his housekeeper in several US censuses. Older family members had told me that she was not the housekeeper but was his live-in girlfriend. Well, I mean, this is why talking to your family members is really important when it comes to doing your family history, because a record cannot capture all of the nuance of a relationship, you know? And I know Ellie, actually, you might have seen on social media, she's done these really incredible kind of looking for love ads, but in the style of like modern dating apps, like, you know, Tinder and Hinge and whatever else. And that, I mean, they're really great, really, really great. So shout out to Ellie for that one. But I think one of them said specifically, I'm looking for a housekeeper with the view of getting wedded in the future, which is such a wild and foreign concept to us as, or, you know, kind of us and our culture in the way that we are now in 2023, but I guess was potentially more common back then. Interesting. Oh, we've got one from Victoria. My great-grandfather married 2 sisters. One died, so then married the other one as her husband had disappeared off abroad. His brother... Hang on, I'm going to need to start this one again so I can, like, picture it in my head and understand it. Does anyone else have to do this? This can't just be me. Does anyone else have to picture these, like, relations in their head? You know what? I bet you Jen does. I bet you Jen does that. Anyway, my great-grandfather married 2 sisters. One died, so then he married the other sister as her husband had disappeared off abroad. His brother also married one of the sisters, so they must have lots going for them. Yeah, they were excellent wives. We love to see it. Has meant record searching is confusing. I can imagine how difficult that is to research, as cousins often had the same names and some became siblings. I mean, if it was complex for me reading it, Victoria, it was definitely complex for you researching it, so best of luck untangling that web, 100%. I can't say I envy you there. But you know what? The minute that you get it all laid out, you'll be like, that was so worth it. You probably will. Let's have a look. Oh, bless you, Anya. Yes, I do. You know what I do? I do know a lot more now than when I started. And if you'd asked me 2 years ago if I would ever have enjoyed working in the heritage sector or in family history of all things, then I would have been like, what are you on about? What planet have you come from to tell me that I'm going to work in family history and I'm going to enjoy it? But I really have. And I'm the sort of person now that when my family were around at Christmas, I was like, no, actually looking at census records is really interesting. Like, you just wouldn't get it. And I'm happy to like convince people of it now. Anyway, I went back to a little while ago now. I went back to a pub that I used to work in. And I was telling one of my old regulars about my job. And he was like, you know, Jessie, I always knew you were a nerd at heart. So, you know what? Find My Past has turned me into a nerd, then Find My Past has turned me into a nerd. All I know is I'm going to leave Find My Past and immediately sign myself up for a subscription because, hey, that's what this place has done to me, and I am more than happy with it. Let's have a look. Okay, we've got one more question of the week, shall we say? My nan was a live-in housekeeper to an older man and his childless disabled wife. Nan was in her 20s and had 2 children with her boss with the permission of his wife. The wife eventually died and Nan married her boss and went on to have 2 more children. The marriage certificate states his age was 72 and she was 27. Oh, wow. I mean, there's nuance to that situation that I feel like one cannot get across in a comment, isn't there? But really, I imagine really interesting to find and research to a certain extent. But with the permission of his wife as well. Oh, bless her. This is it, isn't it? When it comes to like human connection and human relationships, they're all so nuanced and so affected by the context that to a certain extent, even researching them or hearing about them secondhand, we'll never actually understand those kinds of relationships. But you can only hope at the end of the day that people were happy, you know? That's what I hope anyway. Okay. Oh, Matthew, see you later. Best of luck in life. I will pop back to the Fridays live. Some amazing love stories today from Rose. Yes, Rose, there are some amazing love stories today, and at least 75% of them have made me emotional. So now we're going to go and talk about something that will still probably make me emotional, and that is the life of Oscar Wilde. So, not that slide. Hang on. There we go. That's a really boring slide. I should have added like a photo or something. Anyway, so February, as some of you may or may not know, is LGBTQ History Month, which is a cause that is very close to my heart. And this time last year, I researched the life of Oscar Wilde through our records to help kind of bring out this content and, you know, bring out content that related to gay historical figures or LGBTQ figures. So I thought I would kind of bring this back for this live to help tie in with LGBTQ History Month, also to tie in with the love theme, because we know Oscar Wilde loves strongly and deeply, even if he wasn't able to do it publicly. And I thought I'd essentially take you on Oscar Wilde's little journey throughout his life. Yes. That is a trait. Listen, right? When I tell you that you think I'm weird, you should meet my dad. My dad is the sort of person who will drive down back alleys, find random tat, and just throw it in the back of the van, and then like hang it up in places in the house. I don't know why he does this. I don't know why. There's a big silver bath tray hanging on the wall, but it's been there for years, Daphne. It's just part of the furniture now. When you're in O'Hara, these are the things that you have to deal with, and after a while, they just become normal. And that is the best way that I could justify the silver bath tray on the wall. Okay, Oscar Wilde. We love the tray. Okay, yeah, see, we love the tray. We love the tray. I hope the tray feels very good about itself right now. Okay, so Oscar Wilde. Let's talk about it. So, early life. Oscar Wilde, he was born in Dublin in 1854 to Anglo-Irish parents, and his address of birth was 21 Westland Road. His address now is a college within Trinity College Dublin, which is where he went to college. So his address now has been turned into a centre for education, which is really great. But his parents were really esteemed figures. He didn't come from kind of humble roots, as it were. He came from quite an upper class background. His dad was an ophthalmologist, which I Googled, and Google told me that that was an eye doctor. So if you didn't know that, there you go. Now you know. And his mother, Jane Francesca, was a poet who went by the pen name Speranza. So they were both very esteemed in their communities, and quite a powerful family, to be honest with you. But they were dysfunctional, I think is probably the best way I can put it. When I started researching the family to try and take this back and try and look at where the family were, I kind of uncovered a bit of a situation where Oscar Wilde's dad, William Wilde, was accused of drugging and sexually assaulting one of his patients, Mary Travers. Now, this was obviously a big deal because back in the 1800s, these kinds of cases weren't reported, and when they were reported, they didn't necessarily have any attention paid to them. But because he was such an esteemed figure, this was reported on quite heavily in the newspapers at the time. And it became a pretty big, significant legal issue for the family. Bear in mind, Oscar Wilde is still young at this point. So Lady Wilde, she wrote a letter to Mary's father defending her husband, defending William, saying that, obviously he never did this. And Mary then sued her for libel. So there were two lawsuits going on. And as you can see in the newspaper above, it was called this kind of extraordinary action for libel. This whole thing was extraordinary. And Mary won both cases. She won both the sexual assault case and she won the libel case. She was only given a small fee back and her court fees, so she wasn't given much. And to be fair, it did not affect the careers of either of Oscar Wilde's parents. As you can probably imagine was the case in the 1800s. But this is where we start to see this kind of dysfunction that ran really deep within the Wilde family, and that continues. As you say, Kim, all the interesting people are very dysfunctional, and all the interesting people come from dysfunctional families as well, you know what I mean? And this is something that we will continue to see as we go further into this. But Oscar Wilde himself, going back to the main man, he was homeschooled until 1864. It was during this time that a French nurse and a German governess taught him their languages, so he learned French and German. Remember, of course, he came from quite an esteemed, quite a rich family, so it made sense for him to have this kind of staff. It was running wild. Oh, excellent. Please keep hitting me with the puns. I love it. 10 out of 10 for that one, Anya. 10 out of 10. If I could give you a gold star, I would. He then attended Portora Royal School until 1871 before winning a scholarship to read classics at Trinity College Dublin. It was at Trinity College Dublin that he saw or found a really strong affinity for ancient Greece as a subject, and he had a tutor who you can see on the right-hand side, Reverend Mahaffty, or Professor Mahaffty, which, am I ever going to pronounce that right? Who knows? You're just going to let me have it, aren't you guys? Yes, you are. And Oscar Wilde called this professor his first and his best teacher. This professor was really, really he spoke the world of Oscar Wilde, of course, until Oscar Wilde was arrested for gross indecency. And then he said that Oscar Wilde was the only blot on his career of teachership. So he switched up real fast. There is debate as to whether him and his tutor had a sexual relationship or a romantic relationship. I think the chances are that they probably were, kind of fancying each other a little bit here. But there's no actual evidence of that. Unfortunately, we can't actually solidify that in our history. It's just a debate that goes on. Either way, he won a scholarship to Magdalen College in Oxford. He won the Berkeley Classics Award, which was the highest academic award you could get at the time. And he went on to the great country of England, to Oxford, to go and study and become the man that we knew him as. So whilst in England, he begins reading classics at Oxford, but 2 years later, his father, William Wilde, passes away. Now, this was reported on pretty nationally because he was an esteemed figure. So you can see at the top, we've got the report on William Wilde's death, and then we've got his death record. But what happens then? Lady Wilde, Oscar Wilde's mother, and his slightly dysfunctional brother, Willie, they decide to follow Oscar Wilde to England. They're like, hey, follow your brother. He's doing well. He got into Oxford. We'll go and hassle him in England, shall we? But where are they? Where are they in the 1881 census? Listen, right? This is the big mystery of Oscar Wilde for me now. We know that Lady Wilde and Willie went to follow Oscar to England. But they are absolutely nowhere to be found in the 1881 census. And I mean, it wasn't even just me that looked. I posted this in our genealogy chat and got the Jens and Aoifes and Brians of the world on it. So I knew that it wasn't just me missing it. But they are nowhere in the 1881 census. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe they were still in Ireland at this point. Maybe they hadn't followed them to England just yet. But no, we know that they're in London during 1881 because Willie files for bankruptcy. Now, I found this bankruptcy record and I was like, first of all, drama. Willie is not doing very well, is he? But second of all, if you look at the top, what have we got? We've got number 1, Ovington Square. We've got an address for them. And this is 1881. This is where they were living the year of the census. So then you go back to the 1881 census, or you go back to address search. Hey, shout out to address search. And you type in number 1 Ovington Square, and it's not there. It's not listed. You got a 1A, you can see that before I took this little screen cap, I checked it, and it's not them. This is a family, the McDonald family, I think. But it's not there. So the day of the census, I mean, we all know at this point, we've said it a million times, censuses are a snapshot in time, aren't they? They aren't reflective of everyone's living situation at all times. They are a single snapshot in history. So it could well be that just for that day only, they weren't in the UK. But oh my gosh, when I tell you, this was so annoying when I was doing this research and we don't know where they are. So since you guys love a challenge, if you have 5, 10, 30 minutes, you want to go down a rabbit hole, find Willie and Jane for me. Find them in the UK, please, because I've got no idea where they are. And you guys, you have years of knowledge behind you. So please go for it. Either way, here's what we know. We know that they're not at home during the 1881 census. We know that they followed Oscar Wilde to London. Hashtag find Willie Wilde. Yes, we should start a campaign. And we know that they're not doing well. We know that Willie has filed for bankruptcy. He has no money. He is the definition of a broke boy at this point. And then you've got Oscar, who seemingly is doing really well for himself. And he's getting himself in on these kinds of social circles. You know, the ones that I mean, the ones that throw balls and drink port, those kinds of social circles. So he's living in Chelsea with Frank Miles. Frank Miles was an artist. His sexuality has been debated throughout the years. They aren't with Oscar, Karen, exactly. They aren't with Oscar. Oscar, in the 1881 census, is living with Frank Miles in Chelsea. Interestingly, I mean, there are multiple interesting things about this, but one interesting thing about this is that he is listed in the 1881 census as being 24 years old. You'll be able to see on this record at the top. But he was not 24 years old. He was 27 at this point. So I think that he was probably taking a couple of years off his age and being a bit cheeky with Frank Miles. And this is possibly where we first start to see Oscar Wilde's kind of illicit homosexual affairs within our records. And it's kind of really nice that we can pull that and kind of draw these conclusions. Now, we could be totally wrong. They could have been entirely platonic. But they became very close very quickly. Frank introduced Oscar to his kind of socialite friends, including Lily Langtry, who was kind of Frank's muse in inverted commas. And the two of them together began what was known as the Langtry Club. Some newspapers reported even on them starting like a cult together, like a little socialite cult. So it's clear that they were very, very close. And yeah, it's really, really astounding that we get to kind of go through these records and find these things out. But he didn't stay there for long. After a while, Wilde he gained a lot of notoriety. He'd started writing at this point. His work had gotten a lot of writing. And he'd also started lecturing as well. He went off to America and did kind of a tour of lectures. You know how like bands do like tours of stadiums these days? Well, at this point, Wilde was doing a tour of America, but he was solely lecturing. And I don't know about you, but I would give my arm and my leg to go and see Oscar Wilde do a lecture. But he wasn't impervious to kind of a lot of mocking and a lot of people laughing at them. This is this camp kind of man, this camp man with flowers in his buttonholes, which we know now created a whole language between kind of closeted gay people at the time with the Green Carnation. But this camp man with his hats and his flowers and his buttonholes. And at one point at Harvard, there was a really horrible practical joke that was played where all of the students decided to dress up like Oscar Wilde, like it was fancy dress, and kind of laugh at him through his lecture. So he wasn't impervious to a lot of mocking, but he still had this kind of really strong, like kind of cult of followers for the aesthetics movement and all of this kind of thing. So he wasn't alone, but he was definitely a kind of a very divisive figure. And you can see that when you search the newspapers. By 1888 even, I lied, 1888, he married Constance Lloyd in London. Whether or not Constance kind of knew about his sexuality, we don't know. We do know that he fathered 2 children with Constance, and we do know that they were reported to be estranged. So we can see that actually in the 1891 census. We can see that Oscar is here as the head of household and Constance is nowhere to be seen. Again, she's another one that I struggle to find. But who do we have but Jane and William Wilde? We found them 10 years later, but we found them living in Chelsea. Now, it's at this point that William and Oscar, they're not mates. They're not friends. So basically, Oscar has been kind of giving William money to keep him afloat since the bankruptcy because Oscar's doing particularly well at this point. And he's giving William money so that he doesn't like end up destitute and on the streets. But he finds out that William has also been taking money from his mother who also isn't the richest person in the world. And he's not been telling the mother that Oscar has been giving him money. And he's not been telling Oscar that his mother has been giving him money. So obviously Oscar finds out about this and he's like, we're done. We're absolutely done. We are not brothers anymore. That's not something brothers do, which you can kind of understand. But this is what I mean when I say that this kind of dysfunction follows them through the family between bankruptcies and lawsuits and libel cases and falling out and disputes over money. You've got this kind of what I imagine was a competition of Oscar doing so incredibly well and writing so many beautiful plays and this sort of thing between Willie, who was literally bankrupt and essentially stealing money from his family at this point. Really dysfunctional family dynamics. But by 1886, Oscar Wilde had started to kind of fade from sight. Potentially this is because he was starting to engage more in these homosexual affairs and these gay affairs and potentially didn't want the public eye on him as much, which is totally understandable. As the Manchester Evening News reported, we presume he is still dear to the memory of a section of eccentric fellow creatures who once hailed him as the leader of a cult. So then, 1895, the inevitable happens. Oscar Wilde is arrested for gross indecency. The works of Lord Alfred Douglas, considered to be his kind of great love, were used against him in the trial. And one of these works was a poem called Two Loves, which describes a love that dare not speak its name. Now, this is often incorrectly attributed to Oscar Wilde, but it wasn't Wilde that wrote this. It was Lord Alfred Douglas about Wilde. But Oscar Wilde did go ahead in his trial, and he said that the love that dare not speak his name is in this century misunderstood. And on that account of it, I am placed where I am now. It is beautiful. It is fine. It is the noblest form of affection. There is nothing unnatural about it. It is intellectual, and it repeatedly exists between an older and a younger man when the younger man has intellect and the older man has intellect, and the younger man has all the joy, hope, and glamour of life before him. This quote here is from Oscar Wilde in his trial, is part of the reason that I do believe that he was having an affair with his tutor at the time, many, many years ago. But again, that is very much just a big presumption. Either way, it's a beautiful quotation, and it was really ill-advised of him to do this, because this was him very much standing up and saying, yes, I was in a relationship with Lord Alfred Douglas, and I love him, and what do you want me to do about it? It's why I'm here. It's not unnatural. It's literally just why I'm here. But weirdly, the jury were like, we can't come with a verdict. So he was released on bail. But then, unfortunately, arrested again. 2 months later, put on trial and imprisoned. So by the end of 1895, he was in jail. While he was incarcerated, his mother passed away in her Chelsea flat from bronchitis. Apparently, she had requested to see him in jail, and her request was denied, so he never got to see his mother again, unfortunately. Oscar fronted the entire cost for her funeral because Willie was still destitute, and Oscar and Willie never made up. Apparently, his mother's dying wish was that her two boys would make up, and they never did, unfortunately. But her death was reported on nationally. She'd made quite a name for herself in London kind of socialite circles, and especially being the talented writer that she was and the talented poet that she was. So you can see, I mean, all you need to do is do a search in the newspaper archive and you'll find all of these different reports on her. And really kindly as well, none of the reports on her death brought up the kind of trial and the incarceration of Oscar Wilde. They focused on her and her achievements at the same time. So I mean, I don't know if it's weird to say that it was lovely of the newspapers to do, but I guess to a certain extent it was. And then in 1897, Oscar Wilde is released from prison. He flees to France because he knows that obviously he'll face vilification. And he lives with Lord Alfred Douglas briefly during this time. He also goes under the pseudonym of Sebastian Melmoth. Now, this is a man who has been driven out of he's been imprisoned, he's been driven out of his country, he's recently lost his mother, he's been turned away from the Catholic Church, which he tried to convert to, and they said, nope, we're not having you. And he was like, okay, he's been turned away from the Catholic Church, he's got no money anymore because he's not been making money, but he's had to pay out for things like his mother's funeral and give money to Willie to keep him afloat. But seemingly he felt like this spiritual renewal after his release. And he said that he wanted to eat all the fruit of the fruit of all the trees in the garden of the world. And so indeed I went out and I lived. My only mistake was I confined myself so exclusively to the trees of what seemed to me the sunlit side of the garden, and it shunned the other side for its shadow and its gloom. And he felt the spiritual renewal. Now, this quotation, we were talking about letters earlier, weren't we? Was it you, Kim, that we were talking about these, or the postcard or the letters? This was in a 50,000 word letter that he wrote to Lord Alfred Douglas. Lord Alfred Douglas, till the day he died, denied ever receiving the letter, but we don't know if that's true. This was literally 5 dissertations worth of letter. Someone sends me a voice note that's like 3 minutes. I refuse to listen to it. But this was 50,000 words in a letter, all about, you know, his love for Lord Alfred Douglas and his spiritual renewal and the way that he changed while he'd been incarcerated. And then at the age just 45, Oscar Wilde passes away in France. A very, very young death, unfortunately, but a very full life at the same time, both in good and bad ways. We found a death record for him in our British Armed Forces and Overseas Deaths and Burials collection. He is listed here, if you look at the bottom here, with his wife, Constance. Now, this is really odd because Oscar Wilde is buried in France and Constance is buried in Italy. So why are they listed together beyond, you know, kind of the system's sense of matrimony and man and wife and this kind of thing? Who knows? Probably just the system's sense of matrimony and this idea of man and wife. But yes, they are listed together despite being buried on completely different sides of Europe. And again, just like they did with his mother, when the newspapers reported on it, they didn't focus on the gross indecency. They didn't focus on the incarceration. They focused very much on his family and the talent that he was and the incredible works that he put out. I mean, bear in mind that when Oscar Wilde was incarcerated that same year, The Importance of Being Earnest was still being played in London. It was a hugely, immensely popular play. So he didn't just kind of disappear from the public eye in the slightest. And all of these newspapers made sure to mention these literary gifts that he had, and they really kind of steered clear of these few years of incarceration, which, again, I mean, in this day and age, kind of feels silly to say, but was good of them. Realistically, he kind of preserved some of that or all of that reputation, and now is considered to be a kind of posthumous pioneer of gay rights and of the LGBTQ community. So there you go. There's my research on Oscar Wilde, his very dysfunctional family, and all that entails. I think it's really important, not just in February, but every month of the year, to spotlight these kinds of stories that don't get told. And when you have access to records like these, you can see, just like we did with 1881, and we found him living with Frank Miles, you can see these kinds of connections and relationships in ways that might not have been necessarily available to the public, might not have been reported on. We can see that that relationship behind closed doors might be something different to the way that we viewed it. And it's a really beautiful thing to be able to go back and kind of draw our assumptions and do our research on that and spotlight these stories. So there you go. That's the end of that one. I hope you enjoyed it, though. I really enjoyed researching it. Yes, I'm coming along, please. Once we get time travel sorted, knock on my door. I'll be in Glasgow, so I'll be just down the road from you, Anya. You can come and knock on my door. We'll have a cup of tea and we'll hop in the TARDIS. How does that sound? Sounds like a dream, I think. Oh, Rose is coming with us as well. We're going to have a great crew for this. We're going to have a great crew. Oh, let me just quickly look at this. I have never found his birth registration nor his death, although some people have his details mixed up with the same name, born the same year. My aunt recently told me that he was born in France, but this doesn't make sense as there's no record of his parents going abroad. Big mysteries. Okay, I am relying on Rose now to come and tell me when you solve this mystery, Gina, because you've got me hooked. You've got me hooked. You need to write a book. You do. You all need to write books. You all need to write books about all of these things so that I can actually read it and I can get conclusions and I can be happy that you smashed all of your family history brick walls. But thank you so much for coming to my live and making it a really, really lovely way to end my time doing Fridays lives or lives in general. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. I'm going to go and get a glass of wine and probably a glass of water as well, because I always end up dehydrated after these lives. And hydration is key. That's important. Stay hydrated, guys. Just down the road. I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but we're in the same country. That's just down the road. Ask an American. They'll tell you that Glasgow and Fife are just down the road from each other because they drive like 12 hours a day or something. You know what I mean? Their states are massive. So, yes. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to do Fridays live hosting for you all. You're such a wonderful and beautiful little community. So props to Ellie for helping get this off the ground a few years ago before my time. And you know what? I'm going to miss you. Oh my God, I'm going to end this broadcast before I cry. It's been lovely. Have a lovely weekend, guys. Stay hydrated. It's important.